Have you ever noticed that the moment a woman stops trying, the moment she stops explaining, the moment she finally walks away, that's when a man suddenly realizes what he's about to lose forever? It's not anger, it's not drama, it's not a threat that makes him chase. It's the quiet power of her self-respect, her detachment, and her refusal to settle for less than she deserves. Today, we're going to uncover why men chase the woman who finally walks away, and why her absence speaks louder than any words ever could. A woman's detachment hits harder than words because it carries a weight that can't be ignored, a truth that doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. When she detaches, she isn't trying to win an argument or prove a point. She isn't trying to shame, convince, or correct anyone. Her silence is not a tactic, it's a realization. It's the moment she finally understands that talking won't change anything and giving more won't fix what someone else refuses to see. For a long time, she may have tried to communicate her feelings, her hurt, her needs, her hopes. She may have repeated herself until her voice felt tired. But when she detaches, it means she's reached the point where explaining feels useless, where her emotions no longer find a place to land safely, where her efforts feel like they're evaporating into thin air. And the moment she reaches that place, everything shifts. Men often underestimate the impact of emotional disconnection because they get used to the noise of a woman's heart. They get used to her caring, checking in, worrying, trying, fixing, and giving more than she receives. They get used to the discussions, the tears, the warnings, and even the frustration because all of those things still show that she is invested. As long as she's talking, she's trying. As long as she's emotional, she has a stake in the relationship. But detachment is different. Detachment is quiet, it's calm, it's steady, it has no anger left in it, no expectations, no demands. It is a silence that speaks so loudly that it forces a man to notice the absence of what he once ignored. A woman's detachment is powerful because it's not born from impulse but from exhaustion. It comes from carrying emotional weight alone for too long. It comes from hoping someone will wake up and choosing to wake up herself instead. Detachment means she has stopped fighting battles that shouldn't have been hers in the first place. She isn't keeping score anymore because the game has ended in her mind. She stops overthinking and starts observing. She stops begging for effort and starts giving that energy back to herself. That shift is something a man feels immediately, even if she doesn't speak a single word. He starts to feel the absence of her attention. He starts to recognize the difference in her tone, her energy, her availability. He notices she no longer reacts to things that once bothered her. She no longer questions, no longer explains, no longer tries to fix misunderstandings. She's still present physically, maybe, but emotionally she's already on the way out. And that emotional distance is far more alarming than any argument she could have started. Arguments can be repaired. Conversations can be resolved, but detachment means the connection is no longer there to repair. When a woman detaches, it forces a man to face himself without the cushion of her love. He becomes aware of the space where her care used to be, the effort she used to give, the small things she used to do that he took for granted. Her calls aren't coming in like before. Her messages are shorter. Her patience is thinner. Her kindness is no longer automatic. Her energy isn't centered around him anymore. And this shift hits harder because it is felt, not heard. Words can be dismissed, debated, or argued against. But silence leaves no room for excuses. Silence creates a mirror, and in that mirror, a man sees everything he ignored. Her detachment is also powerful because it signals self-respect. It shows that she values her peace more than the cycle of pain she was stuck in. She chooses distance not to punish him but to honor herself. She doesn't detach to make him chase her. She detaches because she finally understands that she deserves a love that doesn't need to be begged for. And this self-respect makes her more attractive than any emotional plea ever could, because it shows strength, it shows growth, it shows clarity, it shows that she is no longer willing to carry a relationship on her back while someone else drags their feet. Detachment also hits harder because it reveals what he truly feels. When a woman is emotionally available, a man may take her presence for granted. When she is expressive, he may assume she will always be there. But when she withdraws emotionally, he is forced to confront what she actually meant to him. Some men realize too late that her presence was stabilizing, her love was grounding, and her support was the glue holding everything together. Some men only realize her value when her energy is no longer flowing toward them, and while it may seem unfair, this delayed recognition is very real. A man often sees the depth of a woman's love only after her heart has stepped back. A woman's detachment is not coldness, it is protection. It is choosing herself after choosing someone else for too long. It is picking peace over chaos and clarity over confusion. When she detaches, she is not trying to destroy the relationship. She has simply accepted that holding on hurts more than letting go. And that acceptance creates a shift that a man can feel deeply, because he suddenly becomes aware of how much she anchored him, cared for him, and gave to him without asking for much in return. Detachment hits harder because it comes without announcement. She doesn't always warn. She doesn't always declare what she is about to do. She simply stops trying in the ways she used to. She no longer reaches out first. She stops explaining her feelings. She stops reminding him of what she needs. She stops hoping he will change. Her love becomes quiet, then distant, then gone. And by the time he realizes the gravity of that silence, she has already built a world where he is no longer the center. Men chase the woman who detaches because that detachment exposes reality. It reveals her worth, his mistakes, and the fragility of connection when it's one-sided. It breaks the illusion of permanence and reminds him that even the most loving woman will walk away when she stops being valued. And once she detaches, she becomes a version of herself he can no longer reach with the same ease, because she has reclaimed her power and redirected her love inward, creating a distance that no words can easily bridge back. Walking away shifts the power in a way that words, warnings, and emotional conversations never could. When a woman finally steps back, the entire dynamic of the relationship changes without her needing to announce it. For a long time, she may have been the one holding everything together, putting in the effort, initiating the conversations, fixing misunderstandings, and keeping the emotional connection alive. She may have been the one who cared a little more, tried a little harder, and loved a little deeper. But when she walks away, all of that energy returns to her, and the balance that once leaned heavily in his favor suddenly collapses. Nothing exposes the truth of a connection more clearly than distance, and nothing forces a man to confront his own behavior faster than the realization that she is no longer standing where he left her. Walking away is powerful because it is a decision made in silence, not in anger. It is a moment of clarity after months or years of confusion. It is the point where she finally understands that love alone is not enough to keep her in a place where she feels unseen or unvalued. And that understanding changes everything. When she walks away, she is no longer participating in the same patterns, arguments, or cycles that once drained her. She's no longer playing a role in the emotional tug-of-war he grew used to. She breaks the pattern simply by removing herself from it, and the absence of that old familiar energy forces him to see the imbalance that became normal to him. A man rarely feels the weight of a woman's effort when she's still giving it. He gets used to her presence, he gets used to her availability, he gets used to the emotional labor she carries. But when she walks away, that labor disappears, and for the first time, he experiences what the relationship feels like without her contribution. Suddenly, there are no long messages explaining her feelings, no reminders about what needs to be fixed, no soft heart trying to smooth over the rough edges, no comfort, no emotional anchor, no steady place to land. Everything feels different, emptier, quieter, and that quietness hits him harder than any confrontation ever could. The shift in power happens because she is no longer operating from a place of need. When she was trying to make things work, she might have tolerated disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional distance because she believed things could change. She may have accepted the bare minimum, held on to hope, and given him more chances than he deserved. But when she walks away, she is saying without words that she no longer needs to be chosen. She is choosing herself. She is deciding that her peace is more important than waiting for someone to treat her right. And that realization strips him of the comfort he once had, the comfort of knowing she would always come back, the comfort of knowing she would fight for the relationship even when he didn't, the comfort of knowing her love would always be available. Walking away also shifts the power because it forces him to see the relationship from her perspective. When she steps back, he is left with the memories of everything she gave, everything she tolerated, and everything she asked for that he ignored. He begins to see the emotional gaps she tried to talk about. He begins to understand the weight she carried alone. He begins to realize how much she poured into him without asking for much in return. Distance becomes a teacher he can't argue with. It shows him what he didn't want to see when she was still around, how much she mattered. A woman walking away isn't always a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's a slow fading. Sometimes it's emotional before it becomes physical. She may still be in the same room, but her heart isn't. She may still reply to messages, but her interest isn't there. She may still be present, but her soul has stepped back. This emotional withdrawal is often the warning he ignores, thinking she will bounce back like she always did. But when she finally removes herself completely, when she chooses not to engage, when she stops waiting for change, that's when he realizes the power she had all along. The power of her presence, the power of her love, the power of her loyalty, the power of her effort, and the power of walking away when she has given everything she could. This shift isn't about hurting him. It's about healing herself. It's about giving herself the same love she tried to give him. It's about finding strength in independence instead of losing herself in attachment. It's about understanding that she cannot save someone who chooses not to grow. And in choosing herself, she gains a kind of confidence and peace that no relationship can give or take away. Walking away also reveals the truth about him. It exposes whether he genuinely cared or whether he simply enjoyed the benefits of her love. A man who truly valued her will feel the loss deeply and will reflect on his actions. A man who took her for granted will feel the absence but may not be capable of stepping up. In either case, her walking away reveals the truth that was hidden beneath routine and familiarity. The power shifts because she is no longer emotionally dependent on his behavior. She is no longer waiting for him to act right. She is no longer hoping for the bare minimum. She is no longer fighting for a place in someone's life. She gives herself permission to leave, and in doing so, she takes back the control she lost when she cared more than he did. Walking away is not about giving up. It is about recognizing her worth. It is about seeing that she deserves a love that chooses her every day, not only when she threatens to leave. It is about breaking a cycle of disappointment and stepping into a space where she can breathe again. And that act, that powerful, quiet decision to step away, becomes the very thing that makes him realize how deeply he underestimated her strength, her value, and her ability to stand on her own. Self-respect is attractive because it carries an energy that cannot be faked, manipulated, or ignored. When a woman decides she will no longer lower her standards, shrink her voice, or compromise her worth to keep someone close, something powerful shifts inside her. She starts moving differently. She starts speaking with more clarity. She starts choosing peace over drama, truth over comfort, and boundaries over fear. This transformation does not require an announcement. It shows itself in the choices she makes, the people she allows into her life, and the behavior she refuses to tolerate. And whether a man admits it or not, he feels the difference instantly. A woman who carries self-respect walks into a room with a presence that commands attention without ever needing to ask for it. Self-respect is attractive because it shows she knows who she is. A woman who values herself doesn't chase what isn't meant for her, and she doesn't beg for a place in someone's life. She understands that love without respect isn't love at all. She knows that effort without consistency is just temporary attention. She knows that promises mean nothing if they are not supported by actions, and because she understands these things, she no longer entertains situations that drain her or relationships that force her to question her own worth. A man can sense when a woman will no longer accept half-hearted effort. He can feel when she is no longer seeking his validation, and that creates a pull he cannot explain because confidence and self-respect have a gravity of their own. A woman with self-respect becomes stronger in her ability to say no. She stops excusing behavior that hurts her. She stops rewarding inconsistency with loyalty. She stops giving repeated chances to someone who doesn't appreciate the first one. This shift in her mindset is magnetic because it shows she has matured beyond the stage of needing anyone to feel complete. She chooses a partner out of desire, not desperation. She wants love, but she doesn't need approval. She cherishes connection, but she doesn't fear being alone. And that emotional independence is rare because many people stay in situations out of fear. Fear of starting over, fear of loneliness, fear of losing someone. But when she reaches the point where peace becomes more important than attachment, she becomes untouchable in a way that makes others pay attention. Self-respect also makes her more selective, and that selectiveness increases her value. When a woman is willing to accept anything just to avoid being alone, people sense it, and some take advantage of it. But when she raises her standards, she filters out anyone who cannot meet them. She no longer chases breadcrumbs. She no longer tries to prove herself to someone who cannot see her. She no longer stays loyal to potential. She recognizes that someone's words mean less than their choices. A man who once assumed she would always be there begins to see her differently when she starts choosing herself. Her boundaries make him aware that access to her is not guaranteed, and that awareness changes the way he treats her because people always value what they believe they could lose. A woman with self-respect doesn't hide her feelings, but she no longer lets them control her decisions. She loves deeply, but she doesn't love blindly anymore. She forgives mistakes, but she doesn't tolerate patterns. She is compassionate, but she is not naive. She knows the difference between patience and wasting her time. She knows that love is not supposed to break her spirit or make her beg for things that should come naturally. Her heart is still soft, but her mind has learned to protect that softness. And this balance, this ability to be loving without being adored, that is one of the strongest forms of beauty a person can carry. Self-respect creates peace. When she honors her worth, she stops engaging in drama or trying to win arguments that go nowhere. She stops explaining herself to people who are committed to misunderstanding her. She stops seeking closure from those who never valued her. She stops trying to change someone who has no intention of changing. She takes accountability for her own healing and leaves situations where she's forced to question her own dignity. This kind of peace radiates outward. It affects the way she walks, the way she speaks, the way she looks at the world. People are naturally drawn to someone who is in control of their own emotional space. A man feels her self-respect most strongly when she stands firm on her boundaries, not because she is trying to dominate him, but because she refuses to betray herself just to be loved. Her boundaries teach him how to treat her. They show him what she will and will not accept. They create a structure where respect becomes the foundation of the relationship. And while some men might feel challenged by this at first, deep down they admire it. They admire the woman who knows her value. They admire the woman who refuses to lose herself in the name of love. They admire the woman who can walk away rather than allow someone to diminish her. Self-respect is attractive because it demonstrates emotional maturity. She doesn't react out of insecurity. She doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't compare herself to others. She doesn't play games. She expresses her feelings clearly, but she never allows the fear of losing someone to make her lose herself. She handles conflict with grace, but she doesn't cling to toxicity for the sake of history. Her strength doesn't make her cold, it makes her stable, and stability is something every man subconsciously craves, even if he doesn't know how to say it. The world changes for a woman who chooses self-respect. She starts attracting healthier connections. She attracts people who appreciate her instead of taking advantage of her. She attracts relationships with balance instead of chaos. Even the men from her past begin to see her differently because they realize she is no longer the version of herself who tolerated disrespect or settled for less. She becomes a standard they cannot forget because once a woman elevates her worth, everyone around her has to rise to meet it or fall away. Self-respect makes her glow. Not the kind of glow that comes from attention or compliments, but the glow that comes from knowing she is enough, knowing she deserves more, and knowing she doesn't need to compromise her identity for anyone. It is the glow of someone who has reclaimed her time, her energy, and her peace, and that glow makes her unforgettable because true beauty has always had more to do with self-worth than appearance. This is why self-respect is not just attractive, it is irresistible. It changes her, it changes the way others treat her, and it changes what she allows into her life. It transforms her from someone who needs love to someone who chooses love. It elevates her from someone who hopes to be valued to someone who demands value through the way she carries herself. And without ever trying to impress anyone, she becomes the kind of woman who naturally commands respect, effort, and admiration from anyone who wants a place in her life. Men react to silence in a way they never react to words because silence cannot be argued with, cannot be dismissed, and cannot be twisted into something else. When a woman reaches the point where she no longer tries to explain herself, no longer tries to prove her worth, no longer tries to remind someone how to treat her, the energy in the relationship changes instantly. Silence carries a weight that cuts deeper than anger, deeper than crying, deeper than any emotional conversation she could initiate. It is the language of someone who has stopped hoping for change and started protecting her own peace. And a man who once felt comfortable ignoring her emotions suddenly finds himself face to face with the consequences of his behavior because silence forces him to confront the reality he once avoided. Men feel silence because it removes the noise they relied on. When she stops expressing what bothers her, he notices the absence of her voice. When she stops asking questions, he notices the space where her curiosity used to be. When she stops showing concern, he starts wondering what she's thinking. When she stops repeating what she needs, he finally realizes she isn't asking anymore. She's choosing. Silence becomes a mirror he never asked for, reflecting all the things he overlooked, all the moments he took lightly, all the chances she gave that he didn't appreciate. Silence doesn't need permission or a conversation. It speaks its truth whether he's ready to hear it or not. A woman's silence is powerful because it shows she has shifted from emotional reaction to emotional withdrawal. As long as she's talking, she's trying. As long as she's explaining, she's invested. As long as she's arguing, she's still fighting for the relationship. But when she goes quiet, that fire begins to fade. It doesn't mean she stopped caring overnight. It means she cared for too long without seeing change. Silence is not her ignoring him. It's her finally listening to herself. It's the moment she stops breaking her own heart to save a connection that did not protect her in return. Men are often comfortable in conflict because conflict means she still loves him enough to fight. But silence isn't conflict. Silence is acceptance. Silence is resignation. Silence is the emotional equivalent of removing her hands from the steering wheel and letting life take her where it will. A man feels this more deeply than any heated conversation because silence tells him he's no longer the center of her emotional world. He's no longer the priority. He's no longer the person she turns to when she's hurting, frustrated, or hopeful. She has stopped reaching out because she no longer believes he will reach back. Silence is attractive in its own way because it shows emotional discipline. It shows she is not controlled by impulse. She's not driven by insecurity. She's not desperate to be heard. She has learned that real peace doesn't require an audience and real strength doesn't require explanation. A man who once relied on her emotional transparency now feels lost because he cannot read her anymore. Her quietness leaves him guessing, and guessing brings discomfort. That discomfort often turns into regret, and that regret turns into a sudden desire to fix what he previously ignored. When she stops speaking, he starts thinking. He starts playing old conversations in his mind, wondering where things went wrong. He starts noticing his own behavior because her silence forces him inward. When she no longer reacts to his excuses or explanations, he realizes those excuses no longer hold any power. When she no longer responds emotionally, he realizes she isn't invested in the drama anymore. Her silence shows that she has outgrown the cycle he kept dragging her into, and nothing scares a man more than realizing she has outgrown him. Silence also hits hard because it removes the safety net. When she spoke openly, he felt safe knowing she still cared. When she argued, he felt secure knowing she still wanted him. When she cried, he felt confident that she still loved him. But silence removes that certainty. Silence makes him question where he stands. Silence makes him wonder what she's planning. Silence makes him realize he no longer has access to her heart. This uncertainty triggers a sense of urgency he didn't feel before because the emotional cushion she once provided is gone. A woman's silence is also a sign that she has found clarity. She no longer feels confused about his intentions. She no longer wonders whether he cares. She no longer waits for him to change. Silence is the moment she admits to herself that she deserves better than what she's been receiving, and that admission is the beginning of her healing. It's the moment she starts reclaiming her power. It's the moment she stops pouring love into someone who doesn't pour it back. Men react to silence because they instinctively know what it means. It means she's tired. It means she's done explaining. It means her heart has shifted. It means her love is no longer flowing in his direction, and men feel this shift more intensely than they ever show. They may not express it, but they feel the distance. They feel the absence. They feel the loss of her emotional presence long before they lose her physically. Silence can create a sense of urgency in a man that her words never could. He may try to reconnect, ask questions, start conversations, or suddenly offer effort he withheld before. But often, by the time he reacts, she has already made peace with walking away. Silence gives her the strength to detach, and that detachment becomes the most powerful message she ever sends, not through speech, but through absence. Men react to silence because it's the first time they realize she is no longer fighting for the relationship. She is fighting for herself, and that shift exposes everything he failed to appreciate when her love was loud, expressive, and consistent. Silence becomes the closing of a door he thought would always stay open. And even if he knocks, even if he realizes the value of what he lost, silence often means she has already found the strength to move forward without him. Consistency is the real proof of love, and that truth becomes painfully clear when a woman finally decides she will no longer settle for words. Without action, anyone can talk, anyone can promise, anyone can say the right things in the heat of the moment, but consistency requires discipline, it requires accountability, it requires the willingness to show up even on the days when it's inconvenient. And when a woman realizes she has been holding on to potential instead of reality, she begins to pull her energy back. She starts reevaluating everything, what she accepted, what she tolerated, what she overlooked, and what she convinced herself would eventually change. That realization doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly, internally, and the moment she sees the truth clearly, she cannot unsee it. A man may get comfortable giving emotional highs and lows, grand gestures followed by silence, apologies followed by repeat behavior, effort one day and absence the next. He assumes she will always stay because she has stayed before. He assumes she will keep believing his words because she believed them before. He assumes she will forgive again because she has forgiven before. But what he doesn't understand is that inconsistency slowly drains the emotional connection until eventually she feels nothing at all. And the moment she stops feeling, everything begins to change. A woman who no longer accepts inconsistency becomes a different version of herself. She stops romanticizing someone's potential and starts measuring them by what they actually do. She stops making excuses for someone's lack of effort. She stops telling herself that maybe next time things will improve. She stops holding on to memories to justify a present that no longer feels right. And when she stops accepting inconsistency, she no longer allows herself to be treated as an option while she treats someone as a priority. This shift is powerful because it forces him to see the truth he ignored. His inconsistency wasn't invisible. She saw it, she felt it, it changed her. She just didn't speak on it at first because she hoped things would get better. But when she reaches her breaking point, she no longer waits for effort. She no longer hopes for improvement. She no longer tries to fix what she didn't break. She steps back not to punish him, but to protect herself. Consistency matters to her because it represents stability, it represents safety, it represents sincerity. When someone is consistent, she feels valued, she feels respected, she feels considered, she feels like the connection is rooted in something real. But inconsistency creates doubt, it creates insecurity. It creates emotional confusion. It makes her question whether she matters, and no matter how strong a woman is, emotional confusion wears her down. Eventually, she decides she would rather be alone than feel alone next to someone who doesn't know what he wants. A man who is inconsistent often doesn't realize the damage until she withdraws. When she stops responding with the same energy, he notices. When she stops initiating conversations, he feels the shift. When she stops reacting to his sudden bursts of attention, he becomes confused. When she stops believing his words, he starts to understand that he has lost the credibility he once took for granted. Her change is not petty, it's earned. It comes from a place of clarity. It comes from recognizing that love without consistency is nothing more than temporary comfort. Her refusal to accept inconsistency also makes her more attractive because it shows she has boundaries. A woman with boundaries teaches people how to treat her. She makes it clear that effort must match intention. She makes it clear that she will not settle for someone who only shows up when it's convenient. She makes it clear that she deserves a steady love, not a love that comes and goes based on mood or boredom. And whether he admits it or not, a man respects a woman who demands a consistent version of him, not the version he gives only when he feels like it. When she stops accepting inconsistency, she becomes more selective with her time. She no longer gives access to someone who doesn't value it. She no longer invests in someone who only invests when he fears losing her. She no longer pours her heart into a situation that doesn't pour anything back. And that selectiveness transforms her presence from something he took for granted into something he begins to miss deeply. Inconsistency often creates a false sense of security for him. He believes that no matter how little he gives, she will always stay. But when she finally reaches her emotional breaking point, that safety disappears. She stops waiting for him to choose her. She stops trying to prove her loyalty. She stops making him comfortable with her effort. Her distance becomes a lesson. Her silence becomes a statement. Her absence becomes a mirror reflecting everything he refused to fix. A man feels the impact of his inconsistency most when she stops responding to it, when she no longer jumps when he calls, when she no longer celebrates the bare minimum, when she no longer loses sleep over mixed signals, when she no longer takes his inconsistency personally because she knows it has nothing to do with her worth and everything to do with his inability to show up. Her detachment reveals his patterns more clearly than anything else ever could. And once she stops accepting inconsistency, she becomes someone he can no longer manipulate with occasional affection. She becomes someone he can no longer win back with temporary effort. He begins to realize that her love was not the problem, his inconsistency was. He begins to understand that she didn't leave because she stopped caring. She left because caring alone wasn't enough to hold a relationship together. She needed effort, not promises. She needed consistency, not convenience. In the end, she stops accepting inconsistency because she finally understands her value. She understands that she deserves someone who shows up every day, not just on the days he feels like it. She deserves someone who is sure about her. She deserves a love that is steady, loyal, and present. And once she knows this deeply, she will never again settle for someone who treats her like an option in moments of loneliness and a priority only when he fears losing her. Her strength doesn't come from walking away easily. It comes from realizing she loved deeply, tried sincerely, and still chose to let go when the effort wasn't returned. And that decision, rooted in self, worth, and clarity, becomes the moment she transforms into the kind of woman he will always remember, because he finally understands what he lost when she stopped accepting inconsistency and started protecting her peace. A man chases what he fears to lose forever, and this truth becomes painfully real the moment a woman finally steps out of the space where she once gave him her heart, her energy, and her loyalty without hesitation. There is something powerful about the finality a woman carries when she decides she is done, something a man can feel even if she never speaks a single word. It's not just the act of leaving that shakes him, it's the silent certainty behind it, the shift in her spirit when she chooses herself over the version of him that could never show up fully. This moment exposes a truth he spent a long time pretending wasn't real, a truth he kept pushing away because he thought she would always be there no matter what choices he made or how careless he became with her feelings. But the fear of losing her forever is different from the fear of losing her temporarily. Temporary loss is something he can recover from, something he can manipulate with small promises, little gestures, or half-hearted effort. Permanent loss is a different beast. It wakes something inside him, something primal, something connected to survival, something tied to the instinct of protecting what once belonged to you, but is now slipping through your fingers with a calmness that terrifies you because it shows how deeply she has changed. A man rarely realizes value in the middle of comfort. Comfort blinds him. It makes him believe love is elastic, that it can stretch as far as he pulls it without ever snapping. But a woman who walks away breaks that illusion instantly. She removes the safety net he depended on. She forces him to see the consequences of his actions without cushioning the impact for him. For the first time, he has to stand face to face with the reality that she is not obligated to stay, that her love is not an unlimited resource, that her patience is not a lifetime guarantee. This realization triggers the chase, not because he suddenly becomes a changed man overnight, but because losing her completely forces him to confront emotions he once avoided. It makes him see how much of his stability came from her presence, how much of his growth depended on her support, how much of his peace came from knowing she was there when he needed her. When she is gone, the silence around him becomes loud enough to expose how much he depended on her without ever admitting it. There is also something he never expected. Her absence feels heavier than her presence ever did. When she was there, he barely noticed the effort she poured into loving him, the way she softened her tone to calm arguments, the way she supported his dreams even when he lacked direction, the way she held the relationship together when he emotionally checked out. But once she's gone, every memory hits differently. Every moment he ignored now comes back as regret. Every time she stayed up waiting for him, every time she believed in him more than he believed in himself, every time she tried to fix the bond instead of abandoning it, these memories start replaying in his mind like a highlight reel of what he wasted. And regret is a powerful motivator. Fear of regret is even stronger. It makes him feel like he is running out of time, running out of chances, running out of ways to undo what has already been done. The chase begins not because she is physically out of reach, but because spiritually she has detached. A man can feel the difference between a woman who is upset and a woman who is done. Upset women argue, done women go silent. Upset women express their hurt, done women show no reaction. Upset women still care. Done women withdraw their care. Her emotional detachment is what triggers his panic, because once a woman detaches emotionally, she rarely returns to who she used to be with him. That emotional disconnection is what he fears losing forever. Her love was his safety net, her loyalty was his foundation, and when she removes that stability, he realizes just how fragile his own life becomes without her in it. A man begins to chase when he understands that she is no longer waiting for him to choose her, no longer rearranging her life around his inconsistency, no longer holding her breath for his promises. And the reason he fears losing her forever is because deep down he knows she was the best version of love he ever received. Even if he never admitted it, even if he acted like he didn't care, even if he pretended she was replaceable, he felt the difference. You cannot get the same depth of love twice. You cannot find the same loyalty in a world full of temporary people. You cannot recreate a bond built on truth, struggle, patience, and growth with someone new. He fears losing her forever because he knows that once she walks away, she won't come back as the same woman. She won't love him the same way, she won't trust him the same way, she won't see him through the same eyes, and that loss is permanent. Men fear permanent loss more than heartbreak. Heartbreak eventually fades, but the realization that you let the right woman slip away lasts for years. It affects the way he dates, the way he trusts, the way he chooses, the way he looks at other women. He keeps comparing them to her even though he pretends not to. He keeps chasing versions of her he will never find. He keeps trying to fill the space she left behind. But nothing fits the way she did. And every time a relationship fails after her, he silently blames himself for what he did to the one woman who would have stayed if he had only tried a little harder. This fear of permanent loss is what pulls him into the chase, not because he suddenly deserves her back, but because he realizes too late what she always deserved. The woman who walked away becomes the woman he cannot forget, the woman he cannot replace, the woman he cannot fully let go of no matter how much time passes. And that truth sits heavy in his heart because deep down he knows she gave him every chance to love her right before she finally walked away forever. A man chases what he fears to lose forever. And this truth becomes painfully real the moment a woman finally steps out of the space where she once gave him her heart, her energy, and her loyalty without hesitation. There is something powerful about the finality a woman carries when she decides she is done, something a man can feel even if she never speaks a single word. It's not just the act of leaving that shakes him, it's the silent certainty behind it, the shift in her spirit when she chooses herself over the version of him that could never show up fully. This moment exposes a truth he spent a long time pretending wasn't real, a truth he kept pushing away because he thought she would always be there no matter what choices he made or how careless he became with her feelings. But the fear of losing her forever is different from the fear of losing her temporarily. Temporary loss is something he can recover from, something he can manipulate with small promises, little gestures, or half-hearted effort. Permanent loss is a different beast. It wakes something inside him, something primal, something connected to survival, something tied to the instinct of protecting what once belonged to you, but is now slipping through your fingers with a calmness that terrifies you because it shows how deeply she has changed. A man rarely realizes value in the middle of comfort. Comfort blinds him. It makes him believe love is elastic, that it can stretch as far as he pulls it without ever snapping. But a woman who walks away breaks that illusion instantly. She removes the safety net he depended on. She forces him to see the consequences of his actions without cushioning the impact for him. For the first time, he has to stand face to face with the reality that she is not obligated to stay, that her love is not an unlimited resource, that her patience is not a lifetime guarantee. This realization triggers the chase, not because he suddenly becomes a changed man overnight, but because losing her completely forces him to confront emotions he once avoided. It makes him see how much of his stability came from her presence, how much of his growth depended on her support, how much of his peace came from knowing she was there when he needed her. When she is gone, the silence around him becomes loud enough to expose how much he depended on her without ever admitting it. There is also something he never expected. Her absence feels heavier than her presence ever did. When she was there, he barely noticed the effort she poured into loving him, the way she softened her tone to calm arguments, the way she supported his dreams even when he lacked direction, the way she held the relationship together when he emotionally checked out. But once she's gone, every memory hits differently. Every moment he ignored now comes back as regret. Every time she stayed up waiting for him, every time she believed in him more than he believed in himself, every time she tried to fix the bond instead of abandoning it, these memories start replaying in his mind like a highlight reel of what he wasted. And regret is a powerful motivator. Fear of regret is even stronger. It makes him feel like he is running out of time, running out of chances, running out of ways to undo what has already been done. The chase begins not because she is physically out of reach, but because spiritually she has detached. A man can feel the difference between a woman who is upset and a woman who is done. Upset women argue, done women go silent. Upset women express their hurt, done women show no reaction. Upset women still care. Done women withdraw their care. Her emotional detachment is what triggers his panic, because once a woman detaches emotionally, she rarely returns to who she used to be with him. That emotional disconnection is what he fears losing forever. Her love was his safety net, her loyalty was his foundation, and when she removes that stability, he realizes just how fragile his own life becomes without her in it. A man begins to chase when he understands that she is no longer waiting for him to choose her, no longer rearranging her life around his inconsistency, no longer holding her breath for his promises. And the reason he fears losing her forever is because deep down he knows she was the best version of love he ever received. Even if he never admitted it, even if he acted like he didn't care, even if he pretended she was replaceable, he felt the difference. You cannot get the same depth of love twice. You cannot find the same loyalty in a world full of temporary people. You cannot recreate a bond built on truth, struggle, patience, and growth with someone new. He fears losing her forever because he knows that once she walks away, she won't come back as the same woman. She won't love him the same way, she won't trust him the same way, she won't see him through the same eyes, and that loss is permanent. Men fear permanent loss more than heartbreak. Heartbreak eventually fades, but the realization that you let the right woman slip away lasts for years. It affects the way he dates, the way he trusts, the way he chooses, the way he looks at other women. He keeps comparing them to her even though he pretends not to. He keeps chasing versions of her he will never find. He keeps trying to fill the space she left behind, but nothing fits the way she did. And every time a relationship fails after her, he silently blames himself for what he did to the one woman who would have stayed if he had only tried a little harder. This fear of permanent loss is what pulls him into the chase, not because he suddenly deserves her back, but because he realizes Late what she always deserved. The woman who walked away becomes the woman he cannot forget, the woman he cannot replace, the woman he cannot fully let go of no matter how much time passes. And that truth sits heavy in his heart, because deep down he knows she gave him every chance to love her right, before she finally walked away forever.